Real Agriculture presents the Bushels and Bytes podcast, brought to you by the Canadian Agri-Food Automation and Intelligence Network. Shaun Haney here with RealAgriculture.com, and it's time for another episode of the Bushels and Bytes podcast presented by CAAIN. Today we're going to look at technology and innovation and autonomy, all from the perspective of the people side of the equation. Joining us is Jen Wright. She's Executive Director with the Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council, better known as CAHRC. Jen, it is great to chat with you.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Shaun. Happy to be here.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. We hear a lot about, shortage of people in our industry, and that could be people working in primary on the farm, or it could be people in the C-suite and everywhere in between. How short are we of people right now in the industry?
Right now, we're pretty significantly short. I know that that's been a story that's been told for a long time for the industry. We're seeing it grow. And as you point out, we're seeing it in every aspect across the value chain from, primary production and general laborers all the way to the C-suite. We have one of the oldest labor forces in Canada, with the average age being around 58 on the production side. And so we have those labor shortages now. Many on the primary production side are filled with foreign workers, which is, certainly a benefit for us. But the shortages will continue to grow, especially as we have people start to hit that retirement age and really leave the workforce.
Now, we've had a lot of technological advancements over the history of our industry. And with all of those, it's brought, new opportunities and, increased productivity, but the people shortage still exists. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when we think about the future and we talk about autonomy and, robotics and all those kinds of cool stuff, a lot of times we present it as if, it's going to be a replacement for the people side requirement. And history has not shown us that. What's your thoughts on all of the implementation of technology and what the future possibly presents and the people side of the equation?
Yeah, I think we often get that question as an organization that looks at the workforce and talks to a number of different stakeholders. And, sometimes by those not involved in the industry, we get the, bring in the robots and automate and your shortage is taken care of. And as you point out, I don't think it's quite that simple. We do know that automation and digitalization, all of that is really coming into more and more into the everyday lives of anyone working in agriculture. But what we're seeing is really a change in skill set, maybe a change in occupations, but not necessarily a change in the total number of people working in the workforce. And that leads us to a number of different things with looking at how we can upskill and reskill our current workforce. We do have a labor shortage. We don't want to be losing the people already in the industry. So how can we upskill and reskill them so that they have those skills, the digital literacy and knowledge to work with the new technology? But then how do we also attract people into the industry that might not look at agriculture as a place to use their programming skills or their data analytics skills or things like that as well?
Has the shortage of people, though, increased people's desire, their urgency to maybe adopt some technologies to try to address the shortage, whether or not that's an effective impact or result or not? But has it impacted the demand for it?
I don't have any hard data that would say yes, but I, would say just from what I see out there and talking to different employers that, yeah, there's definitely more interest in looking at what technology can do for them to save some of the workload within their operations.
So with a lot of the technology that's on the farm, today, from some of your research and talking to stakeholders, what are some of the biggest skill gaps that you see in the current agricultural workforce, and what are some of the things your organization is doing to try to address them?
So I would say especially on the primary production side, in the jobs that might be more manual labor type of jobs, and even really kind of all the jobs on the farm, it's that increased digital literacy. So, when you're problem solving, now you're problem solving something that might be related to technology and not problem solving, something that, you might put your hands on and fix, right? So increasing those digital literacy, communication skills, problem solving skills, really those things that really help you understand and adapt to a different environment, and then communicate the information that you're now receiving from what might be, you know, an output of data instead of what you're seeing yourself, or calculating yourself. So things like that, we're really seeing a demand in for sure. Our organization is starting to develop some training that will help build those digital literacy skills, and help support, hopefully, and increase speed of adopting technology, especially on the primary production side. And then we're starting to work a little bit with ag retailers and that kind of thing as well, to support them on the people side of things, to make sure they have the training in place and things like that to support this movement as well.
Yeah, this is an area I'm not sure we talk about enough, because there's the farm owner deciding, hey, we're going to we got this new really cool machine that does this. Now I know that you used to do that, but this machine alleviates some of that. So now when we're doing this, you're going to do this other thing. And you still have a job, but what you're doing is changing in that operation because of this technology. And there's a social side to this. And farms aren't unionized, but if you think about some of the dock worker strikes and things that have been happening, one of the biggest fights has been over actually automation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, are there things that farm businesses can do to increase the efficacy of technological implementation inside of a company, so that maybe it doesn't become this point of friction between team members and the owner operator?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point that we've been starting to take a look at. We did develop a tool that helps with for employers to assess kind of where they're at on their technology implementation, and if they're looking at automating more, bringing different technology in, assessing their own readiness. And, one of those key elements of doing that assessment is, what's going to be the impact on your workforce? Are they ready? What's our workplace culture like? Do we have a workplace culture that likes change and is open to new things? If we don't, how do we get there, and how do we prepare them? And so, really, it's not something that we often think about, but if you want to be successful, I think taking time to think through that process and how it's going to impact and be received by the people on your team within your operations will ensure that you have better success, and they'll probably be more open and willing to learn about it, more open and willing to jump in and accept that change. And, you know, people are people. If you're talking about automation and that type of thing, the first thing people are going to think about is, what about my job and how does this impact me? So if you, as the business owner, help address some of those ahead of that, it's going to help, address some of that fear before it becomes an issue.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the misconceptions out there too, I find, is that as we've seen a lot of, just use the combine for example. There's been a lot of technological advancement in a combine, and you'll hear people say like anybody can run it, and I'm not so sure. There's a lot of automation in planes. Everybody
Hmm.
can't fly a plane. Everybody can't operate a train engine. It's just our skills change inside the operation of that. We're recruiting a different skill set of worker. So
Hmm.
what challenges do employers face in recruiting talent for tech heavier roles in agriculture, and what strategies are most effective in trying to overcome some of these barriers?
Well, I think really understanding what you're recruiting for and those skills you need ahead of time help is going to help you hire better. And sometimes that's tough when you're implementing a new technology in your operation, or in your business, and you yourself are just getting comfortable with it. So again, it's kind of planning ahead, doing that assessment. What do we need here? Maybe reaching out to like organizations like ours. We have a lot of job descriptions and competencies for different occupations that can really help identify and describe the type of person you need and the skills that you need. And then, just looking again at that culture, you're going to be changing the maybe backgrounds of people, the different type of people that are going to be coming into your business, making sure you have a good workplace culture that way, and recruiting and making connections with those people as well, because we know that most people not involved in agriculture do not think there's a lot of technology happening or in automation happening across the industry. So if you're bringing someone new into the trying to attract in these different skill sets, you're going to have to be open to reaching out to beyond your agriculture contacts, but then also making sure you're doing a bit of an education piece to that new group of potential employees about what agriculture has to offer and the type of technology that we have.
So, what role do you see something like artificial intelligence playing in shaping the future of the agricultural workforce?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, AI is something that we hear a lot about, and it's applied in so many different ways. And in a lot of ways, it's already having an impact on the workforce and the skills that we need, and in our day-to-day work that we do in any business that we work in. Um, there's a couple different things you could apply AI to. It certainly can help on the recruitment front, with when you put out a job posting and things like that. That's a very basic way. It can help you um, uh, you know, look at resumes and applications and bring the best ones forward, whatever that might be. Um, but from the day-to-day work within a business, it can also help streamline some of the work that you're doing. It can streamline some of your data analysis as well. So I would see those are kind of the areas right away. You can get into the technology side where AI can pull through sensors can pull all sorts of data on the health of your crops and your animals and things like that. I'm not sure if that's where you wanted to go, but from an HR management point of view, it's really like streamlining your business practices and processes.
We're going to get back to our conversation in this episode of the Bushels and Bytes podcast. But first, I want to talk to you about the Canadian Agri-Food Automation and Intelligence Network. If you like this podcast, get involved in CAHRC by going to network.cahin.ca. That's network.cain.ca. Membership to CAHRC is free. Have your say on ag tech in Canada. Now back to the conversation. Yeah, I think that if we look at history, we should learn from it a little bit. Like a lot of times we'll hear people talk about artificial intelligence. We're not going to need people anymore,
Hmm.
and it's kind of I have a hard time. Like I can see like reduction in some areas, but not as widespread as some people maybe prognose. I don't know. I think it's gonna the output, the end part here, whatever that looks like, and there's no necessarily like a finish line. It's just gonna look a little that whatever the milestone, it's gonna look a little bit different than probably we think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And AI outputs a lot of information, and someone at the end of the day has to be able to take that information, understand that information, apply the knowledge they get from that information to the next step. So, I agree. I don't think that it is going to have an impact. It's having an impact already, but I'm not so sure that it's going to be put us all out of work and do everything for us. I'm not sure we're going to get there anytime too soon anyway.
Yeah, as we look at some of the impacts that some of this technology and innovation has had on other industries that are similar to agriculture. So like I think of like forestry, construction, mining. Those are the ones
Mhm.
that kind of come to mind. Are we in agriculture any different in, say, one, the shortage of people, two, how implementation of technology is changing those people requirements?
I don't think we're very much different at all. I think it for the most part, we're not different. It changes the skill sets similar to what those industries are seeing. It changes the way the work is done, similar to way, some of those industries are seeing. But it doesn't necessarily change the number of people. And I think when you look at those industries, they are a bit ahead of us in some cases. And we can see kind of where those changes might happen as far as numbers, occupations, how it changes your workflow, things like that. One of the things that those industries have I would suggest is larger employers with more capital behind them that can invest more quickly in the make those big investments in the automation and autonomous vehicles and things like that. Where in agriculture, we do have large businesses that can do bring that in on more on probably a little bit further down the value chain as far as like how things are processed and and that kind of thing, the more like value added side of it. But on the primary production side, we're still many small producers and small employers where they don't necessarily have that capital behind them to be able to invest in a big technology change or big automation change really quickly.
You and I have talked a lot in the past about how we've kind of run out of farm kids, and we've
Yeah.
sort of tapped that resource. We got to find a new steam in the mine, so to speak. How can we better attract, whether it's young or hey, it doesn't have to be young. It could be people of any age.
Mhm.
How can we attract more people to pursue a career in agriculture, especially with the technology and innovation focused jobs that are out there?
I think a lot of it has to do with building awareness amongst those that aren't involved already. And so, like, one thing we do through our Growing Opportunities program, which is a wage subsidy program for employers to hire post-secondary students, is we're really trying to drive awareness of those programs to the non-ag kids that are taking biology, environmental science, software engineering, and get them work experience in their co-op or their summer in agriculture to see how they can apply what they're learning to agriculture. And a lot of them are like, wow, would never have thought, would never even have considered this. So, that's one way, just thinking outside of where we usually go, connecting with people, thinking outside where we usually go for, posting our jobs and job fairs and building our networks. Um, Thinking about when we get people applying, just because they don't have an ag background doesn't mean they aren't going to be a great fit for the job you have to hire for, which I think, we still kind of have that, you could be whatever, have all the experience, but geez, you've never been on a farm, so I'm not sure you can work in my agribusiness
Hmm.
that isn't even on a farm or whatever it might be, right? So we have that type of thing to work through but it is, really getting out and educating the non-agriculture person about what is happening in modern agriculture. Our perceptions research last year, showed us that over 50% of people that aren't on farms or attached to agriculture think the only job on a farm is being a farmer. Super important job. Obviously, one of the most important jobs, but there's so many other ways for people to work in agriculture. And if that's what over half the population that's not already involved is thinking, we have a lot of work to do. And then, we broke that down into like what's the image of people that work in agriculture, and it's all, pitchfork, plaid shirt, and nothing about technology. So, um, it's making those connections, it's reaching outside of our comfort zone, it's having conversations with family, friends, whatever it might be, just to, start that education process.
You know, I've thought before, like Christian Hebert was telling, we were talking about kind of the future, and like he had said, like he doesn't understand why he can't get a John Deere cab in a shop, and he could have somebody running a piece of equipment from the shop, in the false cab, right?
Yeah.
And okay, so that makes sense, but what if that cab was actually in somebody's house in Calgary and the farm was in St. Thomas, Ontario?
Yeah.
Now, if we're able to do that kind of telematics sort of stuff, like say whether it's running a combine or a planter, right, or rock, just before everybody says no, you can never do that. Rock picker,
Yeah.
okay? Let's just choose the rock picker, keep it simple. That opens us up to a whole bunch of say operators because we have challenges in agriculture where we're rural.
Yeah.
And so there's only so many people that are in that rural area, and you're trying to attract people. You know what? You should move out of Saskatoon and move to to Weyburn, for example. That kind of technology would really, really cut. It would eliminate that geographical barrier.
Yeah, it would. That's very true. Um, I think, if we want to go back to looking at other industries that are a little bit ahead, if we look at mining, and this could happen with agriculture a little bit as well, you want to build that social network, that community around the work that's happening. And, I know there's examples in mining where they've been able to get to a point where you could sit downtown Toronto and run mining equipment in Brazil,
Yeah.
um, which is really cool, except one of the things about having an industry in your community is that it supports the community. And if all of a sudden that work is happening, but there's nobody there that's part of the community and contributing directly to the community in that area, you don't always have the same support in the community as well. So that's one thing to on the social side to consider. Now, agriculture might be a little bit different, but I think there are lessons to learn from
Yeah.
others that have moved ahead that way as well.
No, that's a very
Now,
good point. Oh, sorry, go
and
ahead.
it does really help on things like, we saw after the pandemic where rural populations started to grow, people were leaving the cities and moving, out to cheaper houses and more land and all that, but they weren't leaving their city jobs. So they were increasing the demand for services in their areas, but they weren't actually, um, adding to the workforce.
Yeah.
On the same side, we saw that, there was a lot of like remote working opportunities and call centers really recruiting hard in the rural areas. And all of a sudden, people living in rural Canada that didn't have an opportunity to work from home necessarily and might have been available for things like on-farm work were able to stay at home and take jobs that, again, weren't bringing money into the community. So it's an interesting social dynamic to be considered. And I think there's probably an opportunity to balance both the, attracting people and community building while also looking at how technology can be, you know, operated more remotely and open up that, getting the work done without everybody necessarily having to be there.
You think about the globalness of agriculture. How does Canada's agricultural workforce, how does it compare globally in terms of being prepared for automation and innovation? Are we doing enough there to prepare people?
I'd say we're a little bit behind. Again,
Oh,
we haven't studied that in real, you know, data points. Again, I haven't done a lot of global comparison. I do know that, depending on like where you are, and we always point to Europe and being a bit more advanced. They're more advanced on technology and automation typically. I think there's more work that we can do. We're seeing a lot of really good programs come out, through Olds College, for example, and a lot of more focus on the technology side of education for agriculture grads. So I think we're making progress, but I think there's probably still a little bit more room to improve as well.
interesting. Okay, to wrap up, curious on some of your thoughts on some of the future trends that, from a workforce standpoint, and you overlay that on technology, some of the things we've been talking about here. What are some of the things that you're watching?
We're really seeing an increased demand for software engineers, data analysts, anything related to technology and IT. And then, you talk about things like sustainability and climate change and how that technology and AI can help with those type of things as well, where we wouldn't have had that demand for these skills in the past. We're seeing definitely one of the kind of driving forces and biggest area of growth for the jobs looking forward.
Oh, fabulous. Jen, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. This is an important topic. You can go to any conference in agriculture and you're hearing about the shortage of agricultural labor that we have in this country. And we're not alone.
Yeah.
The US has the same issue. Europe has the same issue. It's what we do going forward that is the opportunity, and definitely technology presents some opportunity and some challenges too, because like you said, the skill, what we're looking for from a people perspective, skill wise, is also changing. It's always a moving target, and I appreciate your conversation here today and your insights. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me.
That's another episode of Bushels and Bytes presented by CAAIN. You can find more episodes wherever you get your podcasts, or you can go to realagriculture.com. Cheers, everybody.